Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I know you guys all know that, but I just love reminding myself of who gets to sit in this chair. I am that grateful for what I get to do. Folks, when we went to 5 days, you responded like I could not believe. It was absolutely amazing. When we went to 7 days, I thought I was crazy, to be honest with you. And you folks just turned out. The DMs are higher than ever. You guys are subscribing, you're liking, you're sharing. I can't sit here and do what I'm doing if you're not out there doing what you're doing. So thank you. Please keep it up. And please keep the DMs coming. I love what you guys have to say. I really do. And remember, I respond to every single one of those personally. So if it takes me a minute, hey, bear with me, but you're going to love the response. I promise. For those of you who are a friend of the program, you know what time it is. That's right. It's time to pay some bills. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh, fantastic stuff right there. And you know what we're drinking? That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out, go see what they're doing. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. Absolutely fantastic cup of Joe. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans. And you guys all know how important that is to us here at Power Man Podcast. To all of you out there that are veterans, thank you for your service, and we love you. This is your home. I'm glad you're here with us. Folks, check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Let me get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this young buck across the table from me over here. All right, there we go. All right, please welcome to the show. All right, certified life coach, host of the podcast Chapter X with Michael K., author of two books, The Feel Rich Project and The Business of Life. Please welcome the multi-talented and highly sought after Michael K. Michael, how you doing today?
Great, Rory. The words are not coming out that well today. It was a hard day at the gym and got beaten up pretty good. So I'm just getting my act together right now. But things are great. I am grateful to accept your invitation and come and join you for this time in this conversation, and happy to kind of go wherever the conversation takes us today.
I love that. All right, thank you. And hey, I mean, you take a minute, get your sea legs. I understand what it's like.
Okay.
And you mentioned before that you were retired and that you were absolutely loving it. I asked you if that was a bad word. Your response to that was?
Uh, Retirement is wonderful. It's a gift, and I guess it's a great jumping off point to talk about. First of all, I call the retirement phase. I call it Chapter X, and I call it Chapter X because it actually goes back to my eighth grade algebra class, where the teacher used to keep saying, "You got to solve for X. You got to solve for X. You got to solve for X," and that was so traumatic for me because I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. But the whole idea of solving for X was always kind of ingrained in me. So I looked at uh, as I developed this community or this movement of Chapter X, it was really about how do we solve for life after career. To give you a little bit of background before I talk more about Chapter X,
Yeah,
uh, there's a lot of twists and turns here, Rory. So I hope you have your seatbelt on. So,
absolutely. Go for
so
it.
okay, so I guess the fair thing to start with is I was raised in a family of professional musicians. My father was actually had two jobs. He was a sixth grade school teacher and a Juilliard trained string bass player. So his second part of his second career was as a bass player playing things at weddings and things like that on weekends and nights. And he was the consummate workaholic. My mother was a violinist, and so I grew up in a musical home. I grew up listening to string quartets in the living room and World War II big band discs on the record player. Um, and as I guess as a result of that, not because my parents ever wanted this, but I became totally focused on music as a life, as my life. And I was a
Wow.
classically trained trumpet player. Um, and it was the driving force in my life. When I was about 14 years old, I was taking lessons from trumpet player from the New York Philharmonics who had two students. One was in Juilliard and I was the other one. And he literally broke me to tears every week. Um, through a series of and everything when I look back at my life is a everything is an accident. There was no reason for any of it that was planned out. It's just things that just kind of you take a twist and a turn. And through another happenstance, and I'll share the story with you if there's time at the end. But at age 18 or so, I decided I was not going to become a professional musician or work in that direction. And I did what any musician would do when you go to college is you become an accountant. And so like
Of
if you
course.
think right, of course, it just seems logical, right? Much to my father's total pleasure, it was the idea that I was going to become a professional, and so graduating college became went out into a very very difficult workplace. Got a job, worked my ass off, created my own firm, plus working for firms. And after about almost 10 years, um, and the firm was talking about making me a partner. Um, a good friend of mine who owned a financial services business came to me and I said to him, I said, listen, you got to get me some more referrals because they're talking about making me a partner and I need to bring in more business. He said, never mind that. He goes, I want you to come to work with me. And what did I mean, here, I was a CPA, worked my butt off to get the designation. And I said, okay. So I went from a very steady job of salary, bonus, whatever, to kind of eat what you kill out in the sales world. And it wasn't very long before and here I had a lot of, I didn't know much about like products. I knew nothing about products, but I knew about money and I knew about what made sense for people. Um, but I discovered really quickly that I am awful at selling. And so I'm saying like, okay, well, this could have been a mistake. But the thing that drove me was in accounting, everything is looking backwards, right? Everything is last quarter, last year,
Hmm.
what happened last year, what happened last quarter, blah, 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 all the reporting and the taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in financial planning, everything is about where you are today and where are you going. And that was really what grabbed me. So as I made this decision that, I really loved this, but I couldn't tolerate the idea of having to go out and sell stuff. So I separated from my friend and I built a firm that was built on charging fees for advice, or with recurrent income and things like that. And I didn't have to think about, okay, well, I got to sell 100 policies and I have to sell this much mutual funds. And I didn't have any of that anymore. So I was fortunate enough to build a practice. And it seemed like at every step where I got frustrated or needed to inject something else came into my vision. And I was blessed to find an asset management company that made all the sense in the world. It took all the stuff that I didn't want to do or didn't have the expertise to do, and they did it. And then I found a company called Money Quotient, which was a woman-owned business out in, of all places, which I guarantee you've never heard of, called Poulsbo, Washington. Tell me you've
You're
never
right.
heard.
Never heard of
So
it.
Poulsbo is actually west of Seattle. And it's on the Kitsap Peninsula, which means you either have to take a ferry across the water, you've got to drive, 52 hours up and around to get into it. But anyway, it's this little, like if you blink, you're through the town. But anyway, so I went out and did this life planning training, and I found out not only about what makes people make decisions around money, like why do we act the way we do? Why do we spend the way we do? What motivates us? And I found out stuff about myself, which was really actually the most important. Uh, um, we were having a conversation about the idea of our money history, how we grow up around money is a determinant factor of how we think about or talk about money today in our present. And I thought about it and I was like, I grew up in a house where my father grew up in the Depression. He hated spending money. He grew up in really a single parent home by and large. Uh, and my mother was 11 years younger, and she never cared about, she loved spending money, and they used to fight constantly. So what I found out about myself was money equals conflict. So learning these things of understanding how people think and how they react to things was huge, and that's how I built my firm. And when I sold my practice 4 years ago to my younger partner, we had advisors in various cities around the country, and it's a flourishing, wonderful firm. And I love my time, and I love my clients, and I love my colleagues and my employees, and I'm even happier now because I'm getting to explore other things. So one of the big conversations in financial planning is about, well, is your values. What do you value? So because you'll do what you value. If you care about, saving for college for your children, well, okay, if that's most important to you, this is how we can do it. If you care about retirement, if you care, whatever it is that you care about that you want to use your money for, as long as you understand what you value. So, when it came to the retirement conversation, I used to find men, like, what do you want to do when you retire? Because how can I tell you whether you have enough to retire unless I understand what are the things that go into the package,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, but I got a lot of the results were like, well, I'm going to play golf, and I would just kind of give that what
Okay.
like every day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Okay, if that's what you want, if that's what you value, I have no judgments about it. I said, but what happens if, you get a bad knee or you wake up and your back's out or it's raining? What are you going to do? Are you going to sit on the couch and watch Oprah? What's the deal here? What are the things that are going to light you up? What's going to get you out of bed in the morning with enough juice that you have a meaningful life as you define it, not how I define it? And so as I was transitioning out, I said, you know what? I really love helping people. It's kind of the, the centerpiece of what my life has been about. And so I took two different certifications for coaching. One was BJ Fogg's Tiny Habits coaching course, and the other was through Human Potential Institute. And that was like almost a year's course of study to become a life coach. And I said, okay, well, maybe this is a good thing. And I created this community called Chapter X. And I started the podcast, and I write 3 blog pieces a week, and I hold a monthly Zoom meeting, and I um, send out the material, and I don't charge anything for it because it's my passion to do it. And I do some coaching, which I do charge for. And I have a workshop and a keynote for groups if they want. And uh, my passion is to how can I help people find their joy? How can I help people think about w- this next chapter in their life? Because let's be honest about this. When we stop working, if we have the grace and the fortune to be able to stop working, our runway isn't that long, right? We think it's going to go on forever, but we don't know. You know the old saying, you're healthy until you're not,
Right.
right? You know, it's like, so how do you grab it by the ears and shake it and hold it and make your life something that reflects what you value most? And so during our monthly Zoom meetings, we'll do things like we'll talk about legacy. We'll talk about, how do you want to be remembered? We'll talk about ethical wills. We'll talk about the only thing I don't talk about sports. I don't talk about politics. I don't care what they're drinking in their glass. I just want to talk about real stuff. And the conversations are really great. And I've got men who come on from all over the country and talk about stuff. So that's kind of, so that's, I'm super blessed. I have 3 granddaughters, two of which are local. One is unfortunately in Chicago. Um, two wonderful grown kids who are amazing humans, and a wife that I'll be married to 48 years in, next month.
Oh, congratulations on all those. That's
So,
fantastic.
so I've got I've got bountiful blessings.
Uh, that's wonderful. All the way around, it really is. The group that you work with, it's primarily men, or it is just men? I'm just curious, how you delineate who you work with in that capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've coached women, um, but it's primarily men. And the reason, and when I first started and I wanted to take, while I was still working, I really wanted to talk to women as an audience about money and freedom and using their power. And I was, I basically hit a brick wall. Women did not want to hear from men. They wanted to hear from other women. And I get it.
Sure.
Um, so I said, okay, well, I'm going to talk to men then. And I've been criticized by women saying, well, why don't you do this for women? I said, well, there's two reasons. One, I'm not a woman. And it just wouldn't be right in my thinking to talk about what I think your experience is. Because I'll tell you, Rory, very succinctly that in my experience as a financial life planner, women were so much better at dealing with the transition from career to life after. As I mean, and that's not 100% because there are definitely exceptions
Of
where
course. Right.
women could track a lot more challenging, but the women had it together way better. I had one really quick story. I had a couple was in to see me as their financial planner, and he was ready to sell his business. And I said, okay, so let's talk about what your next is going to be like when you retire. He goes, I'm going to play golf. He gives me the answer. And his wife turns to him and looks at him. She goes, no, you're not. She says, you could play 2 days a week. She says, you're going to get a part-time job 2 days a week. You're going to volunteer 2 days a week. And the seventh day we'll negotiate. And he looks at her, he goes, yes, dear. True
Just
story.
told you everything you need to know right there.
Exactly. 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 You know,
Yeah.
what I think what one of the biggest problems, especially for successful men, is you spend your career focused on becoming successful, right? On accumulation of wealth, of doing what you do to the highest degree possible. So you're in mastery, right? When you retire, you're in mastery. Right? But the next day you're back to novice, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it's like a holy smokes moment. Like, wait a minute. All this mastery in my job, whether I'm a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, a business owner, an electrician, whatever it is that I do, is now no longer of very little value in who I am now.
Yeah.
So it it takes a shift to say because our lenses get narrower and narrower as we become bigger and bigger experts. We need to reopen them because think about what who we were when we were children, right? When we were children, everything was amazing, right? Everything we looked at, excuse me, held interest. We don't want to, you go walk in the woods and you're turning over rocks and you're looking in the street, all the whatever you're doing, and you're looking and you're engaged and it's interesting uh and everything is new. But we need to rediscover that in ourselves. Like what could pique my interest? And then we need to get over the fact that if we're terrible at it, that there's nothing at stake. Like
Right.
if you want to go and play a musical instrument, and I was talking to someone who says, "Oh, I played when I was, in junior high. I was terrible at it." I said, "Well, would you want to try again?" He goes, "Oh, I don't know. I was really bad at it." I said, "But you have nothing to lose. You're not gonna, there's no record contract at stake here. This is just for fun."
Yeah. Wow.
I'll also let you in on a little secret. About 3, 4 years ago, my wife and I were sitting around with this couple, and the guy is a world renowned musician and music educator, and he knew my musical background, and he goes, "Why don't you play again? Why don't you pick up the horn again?" And I look, and he goes, "Just have fun with it. And I looked at him like, I never thought of that, that it was just be for fun. So I did, and I am.
Yeah. Nice.
And and yeah, and I'm playing with with an adult big band, and I'm having to having to get off my own back of perfectionism because I'm never going to be perfect. So it's the mindset, right? Where how do we approach something with a learner's mind? You know, when you sit down to do anything the first time, if you don't have a learner's mind, you're going to get frustrated and walk away,
Right.
right? So it's the same idea in what I call chapter X is the idea of try something, see if you like it. If you like it, do it again. If you don't like it, don't do it again.
So simple.
It really is
So
simple.
simple, right?
Hmm.
I'm not at all surprised to hear that men have a harder time transitioning, to be honest, because as a group, we bring so much of our identity and who we are from what we do. And so, I mean, if I'm not, the head of this or the manager of that or, the guy doing this, if I'm not a truck driver, then who the heck am I? Right? I'm just a guy.
Right, right. And which it's interesting because the working title of my of the book that I'm working on is called "Who Am I When I'm No Longer My Job?" or "Who Are
Ah,
You When You're No Longer Your Job?" And um, you know that idea of identity. It's like who cares? Who are you know? It's my wife and I were invited to a party, and a lot of the people were retired, and I was walking around kind of I'm the butterfly. I can't sit still, and I walk around and listen and I hear these guys all telling war stories of their careers, and I just couldn't sit with that, and I wrote a piece like the next day, and I said, you know, I'm not interested in who you were. I am really interested in who you're becoming.
yeah.
You know, because we have this opportunity, you know, and this opportunity to make this part of our lives joyful. We take ourselves so seriously,
Right.
right? It's like
Yeah.
life and death. It's battlefield, you know. So we have to deal with this whole idea of image. We have to deal with this whole idea of our competitive nature, right? And what do we do with that when we're not working, when we're not on the job? Where how do we channel that into something that's positive?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
there are a lot of issues that men have to kind of discover to say, A, laugh at yourself a little bit. Okay. It's not that serious. Okay. If you're terrible, you know, if you're terrible at something and there's nothing at stake, laugh at yourself. You know your boundaries. What are the things that had, you know, like I'm during my career, I will be totally honest, as the worst person to, I hated saying no to anybody.
Hmm.
Saying no for me was really hard. Um, I learned in this time in my life, if it's not joyful, I'm not doing it.
Nice. Nice. Great way to live.
Right?
Michael, I have to just stop for a minute and just applaud you for being
Ooh,
willing to have this conversation with folks. My wife and I, when we became empty nesters, we had that conversation of now what?
yeah.
We spent our whole lives just raising the kids, pouring everything into it. And even that conversation, just that, which didn't even really involve that much of career talk and retirement, it was like, now what? Was so tough. And you're having these conversations with men in all sorts of, conditions, predicaments, relative circumstances. That's got to be insanely tough to do.
You know what? It's really it's frustrating in certain ways because, you know, like most men, we want to fix everything, right? We are
Right.
great fixers. But what I learned, especially in my coaching training, is that my job is not to fix, it's to ask questions. You do the work. It's to listen and maybe point out something that I heard and ask about clarification, but not to give advice. And because I can't fix it, the only thing I can do is say, That's really interesting. Tell me more about that. And through that process of asking those types of questions, the person who's sharing the story is going to do their own work. They're going to find the answer. It is amazing. The other thing that's super interesting is that we unfortunately live in our heads. Everything that's going on is going on in our head, and it's the wrong organ to engage for things like, what do we really care about? Because we started, well, what do I really care about? Well, what's my friend down the street going to say about that if I, start taking tap dancing lessons? It's like I don't care what the guy down there. I've always wanted to learn how to take tap dancing. It's that, where in your body do you feel something? Where do you react? The head is really good to decide, oh, I need to make a left turn at this, at the next traffic light. But as far as how we live our life and being in touch with our values is all body stuff. We feel it in our gut, we feel it in our chest, we feel it in our throat. But if it's only going on rattling around in our head, it's the wrong place. And the answer is probably wrong, because our head is going to try and keep us safe. That's the caveman brain. That's going to keep us, there's a saber-toothed tiger that's going to eat you if you dare do something that is, out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And that's the voice that we have to kind of say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for the warning. I going outside of the cave. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, we already, whenever we try something new, we're already prone to, imposter syndrome and, lack of self-confidence and, lack of value, in our own lives because we sacrifice for our families. There's so many things that are already in our heads,
Yeah.
and now we have to like clear all that out and go, all right, now what do I really want? My
Exactly.
goodness.
Exactly. What is it that is so important to me? We all have to acknowledge that change is hard. Okay, any change is hard because it's getting us out of our comfort zone, and we feel incompetent, right? But so what? Of course we're going to be incompetent as we go into a new phase. Of course we're going to be novices. So what? So we have to really place that our thinking, understand that where things are going on in our brain and our thinking, the judgments, how is someone else going to perceive what I'm doing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right? And and the reality is I could care less what anyone judges what I'm doing. I could care less. It's like if I go to the gym and I'm sitting next to a guy who's lifting, 400 pounds, and I'm not lifting I don't, he's not, I'm sure he's not thinking, oh, look at that guy is only lifting, 200 pounds. He's thinking about his 400 pounds that he's
Right.
lifting, right? But we as humans have this tendency to think that we think everyone's thinking and judging what we're doing. And not only they're they're probably not, but if they are, who cares? Right?
Right.
This is our life, not their life. So we need ownership. We need ownership. We need to reopen the lenses. We need to set boundaries. We need to decide what it is that we care most about. What are the things we want to leave behind us? The conversations throughout my career with clients about, oh, I want to make sure I, take care of my kids or my grandkids or excuse me, or endow a charity or whatever it is. And but the conversations about, well, I want to be remembered as someone who is caring. Okay, well, okay, now let's match that up with what are the actions that will show you to be a caring human. I want to be shown as someone who is kind. Okay, what are the things that you can do to show that you're kind? So it's taking those values and making them into actions, right? If you want to show your children that you are courageous, and you've never been on a roller coaster before, go on a roller coaster. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can do things to show yourself and to show the people that you care about those things that you value most. Um,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. No, really nice. Um, Now the life coach portion of this, because there's there there's a definitive difference between financial planner, life coach,
Oh yeah.
right? And the financial planner can kind of lay out what needs to be done, and if you do this, blah blah blah. But then, does the life coach come in to say, "Here's how I can help you do that. Here's how you transfer the old stale mindset into actually getting this done."
Well, I think that, as a financial life planner, we talked, so much about values because that's what got people to make decisions that were in their best interest. in in coaching, people who get stuck on, gee, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to change, or I don't know how to um, make this transition, then it's offering certain steps and certain exercises and certain things that they
Mm,
can do to do some self-discovery, and doing at a pace that is, that they can work with, because you could do it and it's like drink, like I do when I do a workshop. It's like drinking from a fire hose. um, so because there's just so much, I'm asking people to really dive deeply into their memories and into their experiences. But if you're in a coaching situation, you're kind of just doing it at your pace. But there's accountability, and there has to be a willingness to be able to just speak from your heart, and not from, oh, if I say this he's going to think I'm crazy, or that I'm a loser or whatever. It's like we got to get rid of that whole, I'm not judging you, I'm not interested, I'm here to help. And if I can help, then I then I'm thrilled. I mean, that's my happy place.
nice. In terms of your business and how it works, the business model itself, maybe. If you, let's say, I'm somebody who's going through this transition, right? And I'm trying to figure out what my second act is about. Maybe it's emptiness, maybe it's, job, change, whatever. But if I'm going through this right now and I want to come to somebody like you, who's qualified in these different areas, do I need to have like a certain amount of something already set up to work with? Or, I mean, can you work with people who are sort of starting? And again, I'm not trying to be naive about, you can't make $1 million if you started with zero in like 3 weeks. I get it. But just in terms of how it works, though, can you come to you if you haven't even given this thought yet?
Well, I mean, you can, yes, from the standpoint of a starting place, because it really isn't a starting place, because the starting place really is your early childhood, is really your starting place, because that's where you first went from lying as an inert object to crawling, and from crawling to walking, and from walking to running, right? And from scribbling to drawing, and from babbling to sentence, to words. So it's that memory that we've been constantly learning. And if we come to the if you don't come to that realization that we're just at another learning point, we're just at, now we've taken all this accumulated experience, and now we just need to make sure that you are using it as fuel to move out into your next chapter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, is this where the book is going to come in? Because you mentioned that you have a new one that's coming at some point. Do we have any idea when? Are we going to drop that on the podcast? Are we ready?
No, I wish I could. I am actually writing the third and final big section now, and working with an editor, and we're hoping to get all the writing done by m- the second week of August, and then it'll start going to the developmental and the other editing stages and so I'm hoping, and I don't know if it's realistic to have the book out by the end of the year. I don't know.
All
I
right.
I'm a novice when it came to that. My first two books were picked up by a publisher, and they did what they did. So this is a little bit better, a little bit different process.
I see. So you're doing the self-publishing thing, but you're hiring the players, the editor, and so on
Oh
and
yeah.
so forth.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Nice.
I had an editor for both books. I had publishers for both books, but this will be, I'm working with a developmental editor now, and then we'll look for a copy editor, designer, or whatever is needed. He'll tell me what I need, and I'm like,
Sure.
okay.
Hey, you're still bringing in pros, though. Yeah, way to go. All
Well,
right.
yeah, you know what? I am, you know, I I didn't want to write this book, and I fought with myself for a couple of years now because I know what it took to write the first two books, and I also have uh, in my back pocket a novel that I started, and so I'm really I had my first nonfiction, my first fiction short story published last July. So I have this urge to write fiction, but um, I kept getting messages in different ways to write this book.
Hmm.
So it,
Interesting. All right. I mean, I don't get to hear that very often. Someone say, I didn't want to write this book.
yeah, I
That's great.
I really wanted to write the fiction, the novel. I was really um, to write this book. So
Okay, yeah, I froze for just a minute there and I missed that last part. You were saying you didn't want to write the novel, you wanted to write something else?
no, I wanted to write the novel. I didn't want to write this book.
I see.
So I
Okay.
decided that. So after all these nudges and messages from who knows where, I said, okay, I'll write the book. So so
You gave
that's
in.
what I'm doing. So hopefully by the end, I did give in because whatever. Yeah.
I love it. I begrudgingly am writing this book that's probably going to be a bestseller. So that's beautiful. Yeah, all right, beautiful. So is the novel still on the table for after this book comes out then? Is that the next project?
It is. It is. Although, if you know what, I'm one of these. It's like I'll put something out into the universe. I'll put it out in the world, and whatever happens, happens. So if people want me to do a workshop or do a talk or whatever on it, that's going to determine like what time I have to devote to other things. And the novel's definitely on the list.
Nice.
Before I lose my mind entirely.
Nice. The book then, who am I when I'm not my my job? Is that the title?
Well, it's a working title. I'm not sure that that's what it's gonna be, but the idea is, who are you when you're no longer your job, or who am I when I'm no longer my
No longer my
job?
job.
And yeah,
Got it.
it's I had years ago I had a client who was an oral surgeon, and I've told this story a million times. Anyone who's heard me before, I apologize. And he had to retire by agreement with his partners. And we worked for years getting him ready financially and mentally, all the things he was going to do, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward 6 months later, he's back in my office. How's it going? He goes, well, I went back to work. I'm filling in for oral surgeons who are either sick or on vacation. I said, oh, that's kind of interesting. I, didn't know that that was part of your thinking. He says, Michael, he says, I've, I've been a doctor all my life. I don't want to be a mister. And like I could hear like fireworks going off. It's like, wow, that statement is just, 1812 overture, cannons firing, like just it's like, okay, so this is an identity issue, right?
Right.
He couldn't see himself in the world if doctor wasn't in front of his name. And I thought that was extraordinarily sad.
Yeah.
But again, it's not my life. Oh, it's like I disconnect from the outcomes. Whatever happens, it's not my responsibility. But it was just one of those moments of going, wow, you know,
Yeah, I imagine. I
because
mean,
it had never ever been brought up as a potential. Yeah.
uh, we absolutely identify with our careers and our jobs and
Yeah.
as who we are.
But
So yeah,
it's not, right? It's not who we
right,
are. It's just what we do. And we might love it and we might be great at it, but it's not who we are.
right.
You know, who were you before you were your job? What were the things that lit you up? What were
I'm not
the
sure I can answer that at all.
I'll give you something to be up at 2 o'clock this morning
That's right. I'll
for
be
all of
talking to
that
my wife
money.
about it, and she'll be like, "Wait, what's this guy's name?" I'm calling him right now. Absolutely. All right. Well, I mean, I love what you're doing. Honestly, again, having these conversations is amazing. The podcast. How is it that you utilize the podcast? What's the podcast about? What's the purpose of that? And how do you work it into the rest of your business?
Yeah, well, I kind of have to reform your how you characterize this because it's really not a business.
Okay.
I really don't have a business. I retired. I don't have a business. Um, but I created the podcast as a way. Years ago, I was working with this marketing person, and she's amazing, wonderful. Her name is Rochelle Moulton. She does a lot of work with entrepreneurs, things like that. And she would kept saying to me, "Do a podcast. You'd be great on a podcast." I said, "Yeah, I understand. I have a face built for radio, but I don't. I'm not going to do a podcast. Like, what am I going to talk about?" So when I created Chapter X, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try this. And so I found an audio guy, I found a virtual assistant, and um, the virtual guy, the audio guy told me what to do and what to buy and what equipment. And I started interviewing men who had gone through this career transition and asked them for their stories. How did it go? What was it like? I've had guys who actually the first one I did was an old friend of mine who I was friends with like in elementary school and a little bit in junior high school. And then he went away to private school. Never saw him again, never heard his name, nothing until around 5, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And his name popped into my head. And I looked him up on LinkedIn and I found him and I wrote him a note. So he became my first guest. And I've had guys who were uh, nuclear submarine commanders and Vietnam War helicopter pilots and guys who were teachers who became potters. And I've had authors and coaches and doctors and people from all different areas that can talk about this transitions, therapists, hypnotists, people who can really talk about the obstacles that we face. And so my idea is just to bring out these stories. I actually had the most uncomfortable podcast of my entire life. It was a guy who was he was a doctor and he it was talking about his expertise is on men's sexual health. And I don't know why I was just super uncomfortable asking him questions, but this engineer started a company that creates devices for men, wearable devices for men for sexual health and sexual pleasure. And I'm sitting here trying to keep a straight face through this whole thing. I'm feeling like I'm a 14-year-old boy, super uncomfortable. And we had this conversation about it. And, of course, the puns were flying left and right. But um, yeah, so I mean, so I've had some amazing guests. Don't ask me how I was lucky enough, but yeah, just found people through Podmatch and stuff like that who've come on. And um, yeah, and it's just, I release one every 2 weeks and we're up to around 210 released, I think. I was doing it once a week, but it just became too much pressure.
Sure. I understand.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, yeah, you've been doing it for a minute. You're quite accomplished on there. So you've got a lot of episodes, and they're excellent. So you clearly know what you're doing there too. But no, I love that aspect of the business. So that's more educational, and letting people know what it is you do, and then getting advice, from people you bring on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's really I I wouldn't even know how to get a sponsor for my podcast. So maybe we'll have to talk on offline. I keep thinking like the only people that would sponsor my podcast would be like um, insurance companies or like mutual fund companies, and I just will not do that under any circumstances. So
Sure.
um, yeah, I, so yeah. Um,
That's a whole other topic.
and since I roast my own coffee, I can't find a coffee sponsor anywhere.
I see. Gotcha. Do you roast your own coffee? Like all you create the beans, or I mean, what are we talking
Well, I
about here?
don't create the beans. The beans are actually created like in, in Yemen or in Tanzania or wherever they grow coffee. And I get the green beans and I put them in a roaster and I roast them up and do that kind of.
Nice. Nice. Now, do you do that as a, and I know you hate this word, but as a business, or
No,
is that
no,
just
no.
something you do personally for yourself?
For myself, for my daughter, for whatever,
Wow. I mean, you're
but
that close to a private label coffee brand. I mean, you're, you
my daughter asked me, because she shared some with her friend, and she said, "Oh, you should have your dad go to such and such a coffee store. They would definitely sell this stuff." And I think, "No, thank you. I don't. No, no, thank you."
that's yeah. See, I was going to say I'm still in that mindset, in my life where everything I look at is like an income opportunity, a
Yeah,
way to
I get
build
it.
some business or something. Yeah. So,
I get
but
it.
I get it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't want the pressure. I don't want the anxiety. I want the aggravation. I just want to do the things I like to do. That's all."
I love it. I really do. I love what you're doing. I love the way you've put it all together in your business sort of, but not really
But not really. Right.
retirement activity.
Right.
There
Exactly.
you go.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Some people play golf. You help people set up the rest of their lives. I mean, I understand.
And 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 you know what? Doing that is way less stressful than playing golf would be for me.
Ah, okay.
So
There you go. I like that.
I can't think of anything more stressful than playing golf or pickleball or things like, any kind of competitive sport type of thing. It was definitely not built for me. So
I understand. All right. Well, I love what you're doing. I love what you're putting together, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the book when it comes out. And frankly, I love what you've just shared with everybody here today, just to get our listeners thinking, that way of what's next.
yeah,
What do I really want? Do I actually matter? You know, those are big questions, man.
yeah. And we all matter. The question is how do we take that desire to matter and turn it into a positive action? What
Yeah.
example can you set? What have you learned that you can pass on? What wisdom, what experience? How can you mentor someone? How can you, you know, uh, do something that's just kind or helpful and make the world just that much better, make someone else's life that much better. It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
And, once you get past the stage where you're not trying to monetize everything, and listen, I get it. I mean, my life as an entrepreneur was all about how to build a business. Uh, and so I salute it and, absolutely I'm there. But for me right now, um, if I didn't have to charge for coaching, I wouldn't. But I have to because it's an accountability thing
Hmm.
and it has to be sufficient enough that someone's going to take it seriously. You know,
Yeah, I can see
if
that.
if you engage in someone for nothing, they're not going to engage. I know this for fact.
Right.
Uh, so that if I didn't have to do that, and it's not that, oh, I've got an untold pile of money, but I'm blessed that I can do what I can do while I can do it. Um, and hopefully it makes a difference in someone's life.
Well, it certainly sounds like you are. And, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a page out of your book, like you do on your podcast. And, as we kind of bring things in and wrap them up. And again, I thank you for everything that you've shared in the program today. I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor for a moment. And is there anything we missed? Is there anything that we talked about that maybe you want to drive home a little more or leave behind? Maybe a last nugget for everybody who's listening. You know the audience that you're talking to and what they're paying attention to here. The floor is yours, sir. Whatever you want to part with.
Thank you, Rory. This has really been joyful, and I really have enjoyed the conversation, even though it really wasn't much conversation because I did all the talking. Uh, it was more like a monologue, for goodness sakes. The I guess the thing I would want to leave people with is the idea that, you know, there's nothing like getting out of your comfort zone and challenging yourself to try new things, to look at things differently, to understand what's at stake if I try this. What happens if I try this and I'm not good at it, or I hate it. Just what's at stake. But to try something and to without regard, is a great gift to yourself and to the world because you're setting an example for others around you. Say, oh, look at Pete over there. He's he's taking trapeze lessons. It's like what that's amazing. Like, or he went skydiving, or he's learning a language, or, he started speaking German to me for some unknown reason. It's whatever it is that kind of attracts you or might attract you, try things and just go in with that attitude of, gee, this is an exploration, just like we did when we were kids. When we turned over that rock in the forest, in the woods, and saw all kinds of life under there. It was an adventure. And that's what life is supposed to be now, especially as we finish our careers and we're able to regain ourselves.
Nice.
Who we were then to work, our work life was for a for certain purpose, but now we get to reclaim our life. And if anyone is interested, they can find me at www.michaelfk.com, one word, Michael FK. And the podcast is on Apple and Spotify and wherever. And if you want to get the blogs, they're all on the website, or you can subscribe to it, and there's no cost. It's on Substack too, I'm told. I don't know.
I
And
mean,
that's all.
I love the self promotion. You're doing great.
Oh, I am the world's worst self promoter.
All
Admittedly, the worst.
all of the links will be in the show notes. Absolutely, positively promise, folks. No worries. Michael, thank you. I
If you
love
can find a link, good luck to you.
right. Every link I can find will be in the show notes. You got that 100%. All right. It's been a blast, really. And hey, that's how I roll. I let you talk. You did all the work. You did all the heavy lifting. I got to sit here and drink coffee and chime in now and again, right?
That's good. I like
So that's right. I tell you what, I love it. I love everything you brought today. Certified life coach, podcaster, author, father, husband, accountant, musician, Michael K. Thank you so much for being here today, sir. And I mean, I love it. I really enjoyed it, and I'm grateful you came on today. Thank you so much.
My joy, Rory. Thanks.
Thank you, folks. This has been another awesome episode of the Power Man podcast. I hope you took some stuff away from this today. I hope that you're going to take some of these words and start really thinking about your life. The reason that we bring powerful men like this on here with very powerful messages for you is because we support you 100% in your mission to be a better protector, a better provider, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, to be a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason we want that for you is because you do matter. You have value. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.